Welcome back, my friends, to episode 12 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. Today I'm joined by Yair Klyman for a conversation about money. Yair, in the simplest terms, is an expert at money. And in this conversation, we go deep about money and what most of us are actually doing wrong on a day-to-day basis to create long-term, resilient wealth, as Yair likes to call it. Listening to this conversation will add a tremendous amount of value to business people, to entrepreneurs, to anyone who questions what they should really be doing with their money. My favorite term that Yair uses is resilient riches. He teaches us how to create wealth that will pass from generation to generation. Beyond the conversation of money, Yair and I also go deep on his story, the time that he spent in the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as his take on everything that's going on in the Middle East at this moment in time. As always, I'm very excited for you guys to listen and watch this conversation. If you're new here, welcome. New episodes of Beyond Bricks and Mortar are every single Wednesday. So as always, please be sure to like and subscribe. And without further ado, here he is, Yair Klyman. Explain to me the definition of resilient riches.
I view money as a fluid point of life, that money does not just stop in one generation. Money does not just stop at this specific point. And your money has to be resilient and has to be able to make it through all the challenges of life. It has to go through the money, the challenges of the market. It has to go through the challenges of you getting sick. It has to go through the challenges of...
It has to sustain.
It has to sustain. It needs to have sustainability. And money needs to be resilient as much as you need to be resilient. So what's the most common that everybody knows about? It's the grandfather walked to school because he couldn't afford a car. The son then was able to buy a Ferrari, and then his son lost it. So the point of resilient riches and the point of building success and wealth is that it's not just you have to make it through your lifetime, but you also have to have your money last multiple lifetimes and to pass to the next generation and pass to the following generation. And instead of just passing your child or your kids or your charities or wherever this pile of money and then it's gone, it's how do you make sure that money is sustainable?
Yeah.
So it's resilient riches is today's money and being able to actually have money forever that you've built and you want to keep and you want to continue to grow, but also making sure that when you don't have that money and you pass it to the next generation or pass it to wherever you want, it actually stays and is sustainable.
And what would you say is kind of like the biggest mistake most people are making in that context? Like, what's preventing people from resilient riches?
People don't bring other people into the conversation. So for me, for example, I bring my son and he's 2 years old. And he says, oh, I want toys, or I want this, or I want that. And I make him work for money. I say, okay, if you do this and this, I'm going to give you 25 cents. He's 2 years old, and people are like, you're crazy. I'm like, here's 25 cents. If you clean up your toys, it's 25 cents. And then what we do is, and I give it to him pretty freely, and then we go out and buy a toy. So he's already in his mind understanding that money doesn't just come from me, and there's a break between me and him. That he gets to cry and scream, and I will go pick up whatever he wants. He can do what he needs to do, even though it's not necessarily his responsibility, or it is. He'll then go do it, and then we go out and buy the toy. Now my son goes, and sometimes he walks around the house a little bit too much. He goes, money, like he just gets too excited about money, but what I view it is if I engage the people that I want the money to go to, my wife and I talk about money all the time. We talk about the finances all the time. We sit and we actually go through it together and we go through the businesses and she has a spreadsheet of all the different companies I'm invested in, all this other stuff. So I'm constantly engaging. The charities I'm most involved in too, I also walk them through what I have and what will go to them so that they're part of the conversation as well.
So you're very open about your money.
I'm very open about my money because how we grew up very, very poor. So we grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey, where people were necessarily wealthy. And my parents were not the showy people. They were not the people driving BMWs with credit card debt. My parents were not driving BMWs with credit card debt. So right. we were true to we had a stack of credit cards. We maxed out our credit cards. My dad won the award for the organization that helped us out, won the award for credit card debt. But what my dad did wrong was he never spoke about money with my mom. But what happened was it finally got to a point where he had significant credit card debt, and he goes to my mom and he says, okay, this is where I'm at. And my mom, instead of going crying and running away, which most people will do, my mom goes, okay, let's do it. Let's figure this out.
Right.
And then over time, my dad sat with all of us. And my dad was always stressed. He was not a great, like, enjoyable person to be around while he was younger. And it's funny because now my dad works with me. I brought him into the business about 5-6 years ago. But what happened was he brought us all into the conversation, and all of us got in our heads, we never want to live like that.
Right.
When you see things that you see, like, people don't know what it means to not be able to afford tuition, and you have to go to school and they have to talk to your parents about you when they're saying the scholarship kids and you're the scholarship kid. It's pretty uncomfortable.
Right.
And you realize that if you engage the people that you care about in the way that and money, and you break the stigma of money, you'll actually be able to have money. And that's really how I view resilient riches. Is you can build wealth, but it's also, and this is how to build wealth, by talking about money. And then also making sure that your money lasts and can pass to the next generation, pass to the people you care about.
Yeah. Wow, that's really, really interesting. I find that, most people our age, none of us really live in New York City. We all just survive here. It's extremely difficult to build wealth in a city
Correct.
like this, especially in at a younger age. Like for myself, my income is extremely inconsistent. It's not very fluid because I make money on commissions, and there could be periods where 5-6 months go by before without a check being brought in. So I find that it's difficult to build resilience at this point in life, because while I continue to make more money every single year, my expenses continue to go up every single year. So it's kind of like they're staying in parallel with how much money I'm making. I'm trying to create more sustainable income and sustainable wealth, but I find it to be very, very, very difficult.
I find it that people who make more money all of a sudden will spend more money. And they don't really have an income problem, which you're obviously a good earner. They don't have an income problem. They have a savings problem.
Right. Well, it's hard to save when income is inconsistent.
Correct.
Like, when you're bringing a check in every 2 weeks,
correct,
you can easily calculate what percentage of that check you want to, throw this way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I set myself up in two sides of my business. One is my residual flow of business on the financial advisory side, and then I have my other side that's a life insurance business that's much more like they pay us up front. So you get big hits. So sometimes you'll get a check for $100,000 or $200,000, whatever the number is, or $5,000. It's just extra money. But then every month I know where money's coming from. So I have the combination of the two. So first is on the revenue side, I tell everybody that you really have a restaurant. You have your front to your enterprise, which is your real estate business. But to take some of that money and slowly start investing it into ways that can give you consistent income, not necessarily passive income, but putting it into other funnels and other businesses that can give you consistent income. So for example, accountants, they make a ton of money during tax season, but what do accountants do to diversify their book? They do bookkeeping.
Right.
What do real estate brokers do? They'll do management.
I do marketing on the side.
Correct. So you do marketing. So you create these funnels. So the goal is of the passive income, great, that covers your life. So it's working towards two different things. It's serving two masters. The goal of the passive income is to cover life. The goal of the big hits that you have is to take that money and then immediately set it up for the other goal.
Right.
If you do that first, before you pay your expenses, all of a sudden your expenses will go down. Yes, we have tuition. Yes, we have this. Yes, we have that. But when you have less money in your bank, you spend less money.
True.
Instead of just going, all right, well, I just got this $30,000 check or whatever that number is. I'm going to stay at this hotel. If you only had $10,000, you'd be staying at a different hotel, and nothing changes really in your life.
Right.
So it's taking money off the table whenever the big hits, but covering that consistency. You have the marketing, which is smart, but most people don't have that. Look at the mortgage brokers now. They're all crying. They're all in debt.
Right. Yeah,
all of them.
It's very difficult, and I find that, in the context of marketing, that's just me kind of taking a medium that I love and just trying to push the envelope with it and take it further. Like, I love hospitality. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. I love hotels. I love restaurants. I love food. I love being in that world. I love being embedded in that world. So for me, I started a company that markets specifically hospitality. So, we take, the same strategy we use for storytelling with homes, we use that same strategy with hotels, because you have so many amazing hotels across the world that offer these amazing experiences, but their biggest problem is that they just don't understand how to tell that story and how to bring more people through the door, how to create opportunity within American tourism. So that's like the side business I've created, but I'm still build mode with it.
Yeah, well, it takes a lot of years.
Yeah,
I did it very early, and like I'm able to save a lot of money every year because just I killed my I was always mentored by much older people, and because I saw the experience to my dad going, okay, well, all of a sudden you're gonna have 6 kids. My dad, I'm one of 6, but you're gonna have 6 kids, and basically they're all gonna be in private school at the same time. And if you can't afford it, sorry, good luck.
Right.
So when you see that, you're like, oh my God, I can't live like that, because when the expenses come, when the expenses hit, and me and you, our kids go to the same school, and we're dealing with real expenses. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen
a tuition bill like this for a 2-year-old child. It's insane.
It's insane, and there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Like, and what are you gonna? And then they look at your income, and you're like, okay, well, like you just go, I don't want to pay it because it's too much. But
Right.
I'm actually trying to get on the board of SAM just to be like, hey, we can address this, and here's your spending problems that are bringing up the tuition this high.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, I think that, like, that's a big reason why, if you recall, why we started the Young Couples Committee at the shul, at the synagogue, because the idea is that if we can create a group of people, a group of young families and couples that support each other, not necessarily monetarily, but by creating support systems and by creating the means for us to figure out how we can lower the cost of living for young families like ourselves here in New York City. Like, well, how come so many of us are coming into the city and then quickly moving to Brooklyn or moving to Jersey, moving to Great Neck, moving to all these places? Because, again, surviving in New York City is pretty challenging. But how can we change that? How can we break that paradigm?
Well, there's two sides of it. When I went to my son's our child's open house, it was me and you sitting next to each other. And my wife and I were saying that, we're like, it's me and Ariel sitting next to each other, and then a lot of grandparents were sitting around us. There was like a ton. And I'm like, I'd really like my parents here too, but that's not realistically going to happen.
Right.
So I find that there's 2 sides that we can do. One is we can create commerce amongst each other. And what happens with a lot of these young couples communities, it gets stale.
Yeah. You support each other's businesses.
You support each other's businesses. I did something in the city called B&I, if you know B&I.
Yeah. Okay.
So we did B&I because I didn't want the Ponzi scheme of B&I, and I really like giving to charity. So what I did was $180 a month per member goes to charity. It was like Chabad, and then we were helping people. So what we did was we brought like 15, 20 people together. It was pre-COVID, and we brought 15, 20 people together, and we did real numbers. And we did real commerce amongst each other, and was like, okay, now we helped each other do this. We helped each other do that. So it created this little community. And then all of a sudden they become, when you do business with people, and for me, I love doing business with my friends because I become much closer with them than I was before. When you're doing this podcast, we'll be closer now because we're doing something that's professional, much more than just having a dinner together.
Right, absolutely.
So that's what I love about my podcast. That's what I love about, that's why when you said that, I was like, the first thought was, I'd love to get to know you more. Yeah, it wasn't like, I'd love to hit your brand. It was like, that's going to be a fun time to just talk, and you can get really close to somebody. So what I did was I created this little community of people that did business together, high-end, good people, and we did really well together. Yeah. And it closed during COVID, but that's, I think, the only way to help. It's help people increase their revenue. I don't know where the costs are going to go down.
They're not.
They're not going to go down.
They're only going to go up. And by the way, with each grade, the tuition goes higher.
Yeah, we're up another $5,000 next year.
Yeah, oh my God, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And by the way, they have a lot of work to do at that school because we're paying all this money and they cannot get their act together.
They can't get their act together. She doesn't answer the phone.
Yeah.
It's a joke. I don't understand. I just don't understand it. But and now they're doing the new school. Just focus on what you got. You got a really good thing.
Yeah.
She said she had 90 applicants for next year. She's like, I'm not going to be able to put them all because all the Sephardic world has finally experienced their first real Holocaust.
Right.
They never experienced a Holocaust before the Ashkenazi world did. So now they're waking up, and the non-religious are going, oh, we got to send our kids to Jewish school. And they're all of a sudden, they're just and they have money, I guess, or whatever, and they're finding value in it. And now she's like, we're overwhelmed with applications.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned that, not bringing people into the fold is a mistake that you see pretty often. Other than that, what are most people doing wrong financially on a day-to-day basis? What are the most common day-to-day mistakes that people are making?
Well, I find that people don't have any ways to save in a structured manner. they get ideas in their head, and they'll fill that idea, and then they'll get bored. So there's not structured savings plans or structured savings programs for people. Once you don't have structure and discipline in your finances, it's the foundation of your house that can collapse. So what do people do? They do a monthly deposit. For example, a 401k. Where's most of the money in the U.S.? Most of the money is in qualified plans, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs. Why? Because there's a number. The IRS sets out the number. 401ks, you could save 23,000 whatever for 2024, 22,500 for 2023. And no matter what, it's coming out automatically out of your account. But when it comes to after-tax money, when it comes to just living day to day, people don't have that structure. People have a lot more money than they think they do. They just don't have structure with what they're doing. The reason why people pay their credit card bills in general is because it's structured. At the end of every month, you're going to get paid, you're going to get hit with this big number, and you're going to have to pay that number. So it's the same concept with savings, the same concept of the richest man in Babylon, paying yourself first. And I talk about it in the book I'm currently writing is paying yourself first is key. Setting up structure for yourself first.
So how do you define paying yourself first? What does that look like?
Putting money into a retirement account, putting money into a traditional brokerage account, putting money into, I don't care, put it into Fidelity. It doesn't make a difference. But every single month, setting it on a point, or for you, when it's inconsistent, money comes in, you immediately say, I'm taking 10% and putting that right away. Or for people who are living just on a regular paycheck, every 2 weeks, they put money into their 401ks or their Roth 401ks, which is really what I recommend a lot more if your income is lower. And then taking that extra money that you have saved and immediately putting that away into, it doesn't make a difference. It could be Robinhood, it could be Fidelity, it could be with a financial advisor. It doesn't make a difference. But once you start doing that, you start getting a better discipline with your money. When people then you actually have places for it to go. When people have money, all of a sudden it burns a hole in their pocket and they just start spending and start blowing money on random places.
Right.
And they start investing in places they should never invest to.
And what advice would you give to someone like me, who's an independent contractor, who, again, I consider myself a good earner, but it is a very inconsistent flow.
So on a basic level for a traditional independent contractor, real estate professional, you could set up very easily, and this is more of a specific advice for you and maybe for whoever's listening, you could set up something called a profit-sharing 401k. It's like a solo K. And you could put money in. So for you, for example, if you have cash on the side, brokerage accounts, things like that, this is just a little financial advice. You could take of the 401k money, you can choose to elect a Roth 401k. No income qualifications, nothing like that. You can then take your taxable money. So if you have money in a brokerage account that's just in the market, take that money, put that money into the Roth 401k that you set up through your company that you can easily do. And I could give you a name of just an actuary that can help set that up. So take your taxable money of, let's say last year was $22,500. Take $22,500 at the end of the year. Take that money that you had saved, move the money into the Roth 401k. Now all the money is going to grow tax-free for your retirement. So you're instead of paying 20%, 30% on short-term capital gains, you're paying zero. And then it passes down to your kids.
I'm paying
zero.
Ridiculous amounts of money in taxes.
Correct. So you're also paying taxes on gains. You're also paying taxes on estate tax. You're also paying taxes. Your kids are paying taxes. If you're not maxing out, for people who are living, let's say, not necessarily paycheck to paycheck, but have inconsistent earnings, make sure that you have in your plan a goal to fully fund my retirement plans, fully fund my house my house bucket of money. Make sure you're fully funding whatever your goal is. An easy one to save is save on tax. Every year, every person should be taking advantage of what the IRS is giving us. And they're not giving us much, but they're giving us some tax options.
What's your opinion about buying a home? Not as a cash buyer.
I find homes as a emotional purchase. And I own two homes. I own a home that I've been trying to rent and just get off my head. And I'm not so thrilled with my broker. But in general,
We'll have a conversation.
We could talk after. And then, and I own my second home. So my second home is a 3-bedroom co-op apartment. It's big apartment, 1,750 square feet. It's a great apartment. The problem is, if I was looking for a 3-bedroom, there's not many available. There's not many available in the location I want. They're all owned. So I didn't have an option to go, okay, let me rent or buy. There was nothing to rent that fit my desire. So that's one. Then I also want to live here for a while. So I go, okay, let me do some renovation. I can't do that with a rental. And also, most landlords are sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Sorry for cursing. They are.
You're allowed to curse.
Yeah, it's your show. So most landlords are sons of bitches. So my old landlord, I was paying $6,600 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. He brought me up to $8,400 the following year. Now we're like, all right, this is ridiculous. We left, and all of a sudden he's trying to rent it for $7,500 for the last 5 months. It's been sitting empty.
Yeah.
So like, landlords are stupid. They don't know what they actually have. They think they know. They never visit the apartments themselves, and they're show offs. I guess they think they're rich, so they're smart. So I find renting makes a lot of sense if you're doing something for the short term.
Well, yeah, I think if I had ready to rock $1 million in equity, I don't think I would buy a home with it. I would buy an investment property, though. I
Absolutely.
would buy a property that produces cash flow, and then I would happily rent my home. I don't think that buying a home in and of itself is a good investment.
Agreed.
And I try to tell people all the time, this is coming from someone who sells homes for a living, is that if you sit there and try to convince yourself that buying this home is a good investment, you're just going to kind of run circles around yourself. But convince yourself of what it really is, which is a lifestyle decision.
Correct. I wanted to live comfortably in my home and be happy there with my family. I could not do that in a rental.
Right.
So I went, let's buy an apartment. I found a good deal. It was a 3-bedroom for $1.8 million. Great building. It's a fine building, perfect location, exactly where we want to live. You can't get that in rentals. And I know I want to be here for the next 7 to 10 years.
Right.
So structuring myself that way, I knew what I wanted before I got into there. I didn't just guess. And that's exactly what we were saying before is put money into a rental property. You'll make some extra money on it. That will cover your passive income. Take that passive income and use that to rent, or use that to buy and pay a mortgage.
Right.
But what you're doing,
let your tenants pay your expenses.
Correct.
And your mortgage.
Let your tenants pay your mortgage. Why not?
Right.
And then you can build equity while you're doing that, and that's how to really create wealth. But if you're just taking all your money and go, oh well, my expenses are up, I need a bigger home, my wife is crying, or whatever it is, and you just do it, you might sacrifice a little bit of what your personal need, but the stress levels that you have is so much less. Your home doesn't help you sleep better. Your stress levels help you sleep better when they're lower. And when you're not financially comfortable, for example, when you're not financially sound, what happens? Stress goes up. What goes down? Your desire to be with people goes down. When your desire to be with people goes down, what goes down with it? Your income. So if I can lower my stress levels, what happens? My desire to be with people go up. Same with me and you. Our job is to be with people. The happier you are, the better you do, right?
Sure.
The better you're sleeping, the easier your kids are, the better you're doing.
Yeah. No, being in the right state of mind is critical.
Correct. So if you're stressed, so once you do that, your desire to be with the relationships and to be with more people is much better, and all of a sudden you'll make more money.
Yes.
So it's all about that mindset. I tell my wife all the time, I go, like, you have to learn, like, you have to handle this side in the morning. I can't be stressed, because when I'm stressed, I don't produce as well. Or if I don't sleep well, I don't produce as well. So sometimes I'll go to sleep at 9 o'clock. I don't care, but because if I need to produce, I need to make big decisions.
Yeah.
It's crucial.
I go to sleep early too. I'm up really early. I'm in the gym at 5:30.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. You look great.
Thank you. So here's my next question for you. If you had $1 million in equity to put into something tomorrow, what would that something be?
I'm trying to get my home sold, so I will have that. That would be a nice thing. For me right now,
You're trying to get your home sold?
I'm trying. I got screwed with you have no idea. It's my neighbor. He's my client. He's referred me a bunch. It's literally my next door neighbor.
Tough situation.
It's a if he.
Where's the apartment?
65th and 2nd.
You're at the Concord.
Yeah, the Concord.
Okay. And you're trying to sell that apartment?
I'm trying to offload it, but now it looks like I'm just going to rent it for a year. Very.
Just let me take a stab at it before you rent it.
if you find someone, I'm happy.
That's the thing. Like, there is no.
No. Of course, no. It's. I'm stuck with him until this moves. And then when I list it again, I'm done. Like my game is over. I've rented it more myself than he has even come close to an offer.
Yeah. So what's preventing you from making the switch? Just your exclusive agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
And I just want to be. I know I'm very sensitive with the relationships, and for me, if I make $50,000 and it costs me another 10,
yeah,
I weigh those options and I know what will happen. But in the end of the day, if it doesn't get sold now, that's the end of it. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was probably a mistake to bring him in, but you just get sold on track record, and track record doesn't mean it fits right for you.
Yeah. Well, also if he's a bit older, it's one of the things, majority of the real estate professionals in New York at this point in time, they haven't really caught on to the fact of how important it is to craft the narrative on the surface.
Correct.
Really the marketing of the property is so important. Most sellers like yourselves believe that a home sells itself. My home sells itself. And they believe that people should understand that. People should see it online, and they should see the location, and they should understand. They should understand the Concord is a good building. They should understand that this is a good unit. The problem is that oftentimes, yes, a home does sell itself, but that only happens when people are through the door. So it's not about negotiating. It's not so much about being a good negotiator or knowing lots of people as much as it is being able to bring people through the door, being able to reduce that average days on market. So that's where my whole niche has been crafted over the last decade.
Yeah, it's branded. Well, that's why you do. I mean, I view it. So I'm much more of a salesperson. You're more of a marketer.
Yes.
So that's why you do marketing, and I create my passive income off of sales. That's my strength, and I know how to.
Yeah. So my strength is my creativity.
Correct. My strength is understanding how to create funnels through people and through relationships. That has been my strength. I know how to find what they're looking for and bring in the right pieces and facilitate but understanding that type of person has, hopefully it only continues and it keeps coming, but that's always been my strength. So with influencers, I had a meeting with influencers today that want to do some branding and whatever, and they're like, well, what if we do this? I go, no, that's not going to work. Like that's not their mark. Like you have to know people well enough. So I forgot where I was going, but basically my view of it is if the real estate professional, when somebody comes in, they can't sell to that person and explain to them. And just if they're just walking in, showing, and then leaving, you're wasting a qualified buyer. Or 80% of them are qualified buyers. So it's the real estate person's job is to come in there and sell once you get there. Just because they're in the door, you got to close the door behind them and take their...
Sure, but listen, like you pointed out also, is that buying a home is an emotional decision. So you have to feel it when you walk through the door, and no amount of selling is going to change a person's heart. So at the end of the day, that's why, for example, an empty apartment should be staged. That's
Correct.
a big part of that. You have only a few seconds to make your first impression.
Correct.
Usually in the first few seconds, a buyer will decide if this home is something they would consider purchasing. And if the answer to that question is yes, then they're going to start realizing and pointing out all the things that they like. Oh, I like this and I like that. But if it's not, they're going to start pointing out all the things that don't really work.
That was really our problem. When I was looking, I just assumed because he's the building broker, he's sold hundreds of units in the Concord.
Yeah.
That he would just know what to do and how to sell it. And you realize he sold hundreds of apartments because he bullies his way into the apartment. I'm sure he's not listening, so it doesn't matter. He bullies his way into owning the to owning the building and being able to buy and sell in the property.
There's been many instances where my team has taken over units from the building expert.
Correct.
And the vast majority of my business is round two. It's after something has failed to sell the first time, whether it's by owner or by another broker, for exactly the reason that I pointed out before, is that most people just don't really understand how important the marketing really is. Your building expert, that concept has become less and less relevant because, again, it's not so much about who you know in the context of real estate anymore. You need to be able to bring 100 people through the door. Because somewhere in that mix is not just someone who may, like you said, a qualified buyer, but it's the person that falls in love. That's the person who pays a premium. That's the one who pays top dollar, because every seller in Manhattan believes that their home is worth more than it actually is. Every buyer believes that their money is going to get them more than it actually will. But when you walk into a home that you fall in love with and the sparks fly, like, that's when you start making bad financial decisions.
No, 100%. That's
what we want.
That's really what you want. So going back to your point of, if somebody handed me $1 million of equity, what would I do? The first thing for me is I would fund everything I can that the IRS gives me as a gift.
Interesting. Define that.
529 is a gift that the IRS gives me. Putting money into a college savings plan that can grow tax deferred. I can get a New York State tax deduction, so I save $400 or $500 on every $10,000. I get all the growth tax free, and I can pull it out for college. And now I could roll it into a Roth IRA and fully fund my kids' retirement. Wow. Up to $30,000.
I feel like if I had $1 million, I'd just give it to you. You know,
this is where we charge fees. But that's the first gift I take. The second is make sure that all my retirement accounts are set. The third is gifting to my kids so that they are set up and that they have enough for if they want to buy a home or something like that. That's something my parents couldn't do for me. The third would be, for me, I'm a big charity giver, so wherever I can find, like, put into my donor advised fund and make sure that that's set up, so I immediately, like, take that off the table. And then the third would be to create more growth opportunities. I'm not in the stage right now where I want more income. I'm in the stage right now because income for me gets taxed at 53%. I'm not in the stage of that point. I'm in the stage of, I want more growth on my money so that later when I do leave and my tax bracket goes down, then I could start taking out income. So I'm gonna sacrifice. So people are like, I want passive income. I have passive income through my retirement, through my investment business and all my investments in property, whatever. I have all that. So I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for growth that can later either give me a huge liquidity event, which in my business, your business, we don't really have huge. No matter how big of an apartment you sell, we're never going to get that $30-40 million hit.
Yeah,
we're just not going to have
that kind of windfall.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're going to have windfalls of, let's say, it could be $1 million. It could be whatever. That's a great windfall, but that's not a real liquidity event. I'm talking about the liquidity events of a company that goes public and you came in at the ground floor. So I look for opportunities all the time to hit me that growth. Then that's where I place all my money. I put obviously in the market, I put here, I put into there, but that's really where I place all that stuff. And the rest of it now, the banks are giving me a gift of 5%, 5.5%.
Yeah.
People are living in like Chase, or they're investing in like municipal bond funds. I don't know what they're doing. Like the banks are giving me 5.5% with no risk, and I can lock that in for like 2 years. What the hell am I doing trying to take risk in conservative investments in the market when it's just like in front of, like, every sign talks about how they're giving us 4.5%. That's going to go away very, very soon. So why not take advantage of that? So make money on my money when I'm doing nothing. Take advantage of some growth opportunities, because there's a lot of growth opportunities right now because everyone's depressed, and which is a great time to buy. And then put money. I don't really want more passive income, but put more money into places that, and always take advantage of what the IRS is handing you. Biden, they're going to raise taxes on our income. They're going to raise taxes, but they haven't talked at all about raising taxes on their retirement. They're talking about income tax, higher income tax earnings. But Peter Thiel, for example, had billions and billions of dollars in a Roth IRA. They didn't tax that money.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Those guys are smart.
Because they're taking advantage of what the IRS is giving.
How do you feel about New York City as an investment ground?
New York City, including the 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
Manhattan is hard as an investment itself that I find.
It's also a high price of entry.
It's a high price of entry. It's, if you want, I find everything in tiers. And sorry, there's no real answer for a financial advisor. That's how we earn our fees, because it just nothing ever makes sense. I find everything, if I want an ultra conservative asset and I want a cash alternative with my money, I'm going to put my money into Manhattan. If I want to trade my mid-risk, if, let's say, property-wise, if that's what we're talking about, if I want to trade my mid-risk, I'm going to put that in more into Brooklyn, to Bronx, to Queens, to Astoria. If I want high risk, I'm going to go into correct, and then I'm going to go into the most aggressive markets where people are getting shot at all the time. So you could hedge your risk depending on what you want. But I view cash alternatives Manhattan. So I view my apartment in Manhattan is really just a cash alternative. I don't keep a lot of cash because of that. I don't have so much just cash sitting at 5% as much as I want because I have my apartment in Manhattan that's giving me a 5% yield.
Right.
Then you go into higher risk. So it depends. There's always people go, there's nothing. New York is dead. It's stupid.
Yeah. You can never bet against New York.
You can't. You're always going to lose.
Historically, New York has a lot more bad years in its history than good ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to say that New York market is never going to be is going to be something like, look at, there's opportunities and deals everywhere.
Yeah. It's the major leagues.
It's the major leagues. And the reason why people say there's no deals in New York, it's because they don't have access to the deals in New York.
Yeah.
If they had access, they would do it. There's a huge conversation about affordable housing. There's huge conversations about assisted living homes. There's huge conversations. That's all in New York. They're not going anywhere. These people have money and they got to go somewhere. And the government loves pouring money. There's opportunity right now with all these migrants that are coming in.
Yeah.
Which is a disaster in itself.
Total disaster.
It's like a joke. It's like a joke.
Can't even believe it. I never thought I'd see the day where you could beat the shit out of a cop and then just go right home.
Yeah, like no problem, and like they'll pay for your Uber. It's like an outrageous,
it's ridiculous.
It's an outrageous example of what New York City's like kind of become. But like in the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, the billionaires are moving to Florida, and 18 more billionaires just got made in New York City. You
that's
can't.
Right.
The social giving of New York, the social life of New York versus the business life in New York, you can't compare the two.
Yeah, it's also, there's like if you were to be strolling down the street at night and you looked up at 432 Park Avenue, you would notice that a great majority of those units are dark. The lights are not on. Mm-hmm. And a really large percentage of those units have been purchased by people who have never even set foot in them. And those are people overseas who wanted to get their hands on US dollar, and they put it into what they consider to be the most secure place to keep their money, which is New York City.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, you can never bet against New York. It's always going to be a huge mistake. And I was able to take advantage of a couple of really great deals during COVID time. Like in August 2020, I sold a client of mine a $5 million apartment for like $3.3 million because the family, like, they renovated this apartment. They made it the nicest apartment in the building. And then they just left. They believed that New York City was burning to the ground. And so they completely abandoned the place. Or even, there's another guy I know who paid like around in the high sevens for a townhouse on 72nd Street. Townhouse that's worth $12.5 million because when COVID started, the family left the house and they hadn't been back since. 2 years went by, and he nabbed a great deal because of it.
Yeah, and what about all these Russians and all these Chinese people that had serious money here? This Filipino, Asian community that had serious money here. That it was open borders. And then COVID said you can't come in anymore, and they're scared now a new reckoning is going to happen, and they're going to lose all their, and they're stuck.
Yeah.
I have clients of mine that I met them once. We were supposed to do a ton of work here, and then they went back to Singapore, and they never showed up again, and that was the end of it. And they own like 6 properties in.
They just left them,
and they just left them because they have $250 million, and they don't care. What's 20 million? What's 30? $250 million that they disclose. Yeah. What do they care? And they just leave them. And it's, and they just go, all right, it doesn't matter for them. For them to run these houses costs them nothing. And they go, okay, well, at least I have an asset outside of New York, outside of my country. Because it's hard to get money outside of China. It's hard to get money outside of Russia. It's hard to get money outside. These people are really scared that their governments are going to come take their money. So they're leaving it there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes sense for them. I always think like, one of my clients could offer me, say like, hey, I have this home. I have these Filipino family. They're worth on paper $250 million, and they have this like $3 million home that they just leave empty. I've always thought like, why don't you just offer it to me? Like, I'll do your advisory for free. Let me just live there. Not even close. Never even thought. Never. I don't even think they've ever even seen the apartment.
And did you ask them that question?
No, I can't ask them that. I can't.
Where's the apartment?
It's like near Times Square. It's probably a $3 or $4 million apartment.
That'd be a great barter.
They won't do it. They just won't. Do
they rent it out, or they just
sit there? It sits there. Wow. I've had them as clients since 2000.
And they pay the maintenance on time and everything.
They got they don't care. 2017. I haven't seen them since 2017.
Wow.
That apartment was being developed.
And are you the one making sure that the maintenance is paid?
No, they have their whole, they work through intermediaries. And and then they use advisors. I can't
That's great.
talk necessarily. I'm a Louis Vuitton purse for these people.
Yeah.
They don't talk to. They'll talk to me on a social level,
Right.
but on business level, they won't talk
They
to me.
won't go near you.
I can only talk to their intermediary, and from their intermediary to them.
So interesting.
It's so interesting. You realize like, and one time I spoke to them on a business level, and like I almost got fired.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very weird.
That-
But they always pay.
So let me ask you this. What's the biggest financial mistake you've ever made? You want to drink for this?
I invested in. I trusted other people's decisions, and I trusted somebody would do a due diligence on a deal when, because they were wealthy, I thought they knew what they were doing. And then I realized that wealth and understanding where to put money are two completely separate things.
What was the deal? You don't have to use
It was I bought these old school life settlements. It was policies on other people, but I went into this fund, and it was like years and years ago. And for me at the time, it was like 40 grand. It was like all the money I ever had. And I put into this deal, and I thought I was going to make like 18% on my money. I was all excited and whatever. Ends up these guys are crooks. So I get out some money, and then I deposit a check because I'm just like freaking out. I had to get out, whatever. Long story why. And I basically lost everything I had. And somebody else brought me in who was like my mentor, who's still, I just spoke to him before. And he also got screwed in it too. But I thought, he knew these guys. He could trust them. He's worth $60-70 million. So I went, okay, he knows what he's doing. So I kind of defaulted on him. And that's what happened a lot with Madoff. People are like, oh, well, my aunt or my cousin has a yacht and he invested in Madoff, so it must be good. And people constantly do that. And they just believe, they expect other people to do their due diligence. For example, Kevin O'Leary doing due diligence on FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, and he was the endorser, and everybody was like, oh, if Kevin O'Leary's saying it, then it must be good. So other investors went in, and he got paid for it. So you don't realize really what's going on behind the scenes. My guy didn't get paid. He also lost the money. He was really upset. And that was my biggest mistake, was whenever I don't trust myself and I trust other people, I have lost money.
It sounds like a pretty common mistake. It's not
Very
so
common.
unique to you.
No, it's not. I made that mistake very early on, and it wasn't a lot of money, but I've seen people lose significant money.
Right.
Like,
what's your opinion overall on crypto?
I think that it's a risky investment. I think the concept of crypto is very, very important.
Yeah, like the technology.
The technology is huge. I mean, it revolutionized the entire gaming industry. If you think about what it did for gaming, that you would, let's say you had an online platform for gaming, and people were funneling money into all these different places online. Correct. You're buying tokens. So what they would have to do is, okay, they'd pay you out, and what they do? They'd send you a check. They'd have to cash you out. It would go here or go there or go all the way across the world to these huge gamers or these huge gaming institutions. Now you can convert into cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrency can be sent that minute. So if you want to get cashed out, it can cash you out in instantaneous.
Yeah.
Instead of, and sending checks and sending dollars and sending in their currency is very expensive.
If you sell a stock, you got to wait a couple of days for it to clear.
Correct. So in this, people can get cashed out very, very quickly. I find it a little dangerous on terms of embezzlement and people stealing and all that stuff. But I do think as a function, it is here to stay. Do I think it's the investment? Just like everything. Are you willing to risk it? It's a risky investment. There is no track record. People bought at the high. When people say to me that, oh, I know it's going to go to 50,000 or I know it's going to go to 200,000, whatever the number is, they're typically wrong. Like, it's my favorite thing to see that, and then it goes down the next day.
Like really certain about.
Yeah. Like the plumber going, like, I know where it's going. Like, how do you know anything? It has no track record, and you don't know anything because you don't even know what the number is based on.
Yeah,
the number is based on
like
the demand.
They watched a TikTok video.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I watched something on Pornhub, and all of a sudden, I know all about cryptocurrency.
Oh, you're watching things on Pornhub. That's good.
Yeah. That's like, thank you for being.
Did you hear that, Debbie?
Yeah, exactly. That's a different battle in itself, but the whole thing, I find crypto to be a great function. It's going to stay. There is validity in the investment itself, but you have to understand it's the same thing. You're trusting something that you don't really understand and don't really have a handle on.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel about NFTs. Like, technologically, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think it's just like it was just way too soon to the party.
Look at SPACs. SPACs were the same thing. Oh, everyone's going to go and...
Hey, you know what? Netflix was the same thing.
Absolutely.
Netflix was like, their stock price soared, and then it tumbled. It tumbled to the ground before it came back up.
I have clients at Vimeo, or were at Vimeo, when Vimeo went public. They lost 98% of their money in like 6 months.
Wow.
And I had this one client, was up there. He had, I don't know, $10 million of stock. I made him sell and sell and sell. He lost like, I don't know, 6-7 million, but he could have lost a lot more.
Wow.
It was because it's the same thing with all these tech companies.
Yeah.
Roku, all these other companies just got hammered.
Annihilated. Yeah.
Annihilated. It's pretty sad. I mean, I get over it, but it's that liquidity event that people are chasing for.
Yeah.
They are chasing for, they get low income with a high liquidity event. We
Looking
get
for
high
a lotto
income.
ticket.
That's it. That's what they're gambling on. I had a meeting with this guy, and he started this public company. He said he spent his whole life to build this public company. I don't want to say the name because he was pretty like sad about it. And he took the company public. It was one of the top 5 trading stocks on the NASDAQ that were trading. Company went bankrupt. So he's like, I spent my whole life like building this company, and it just went bankrupt like that.
Yeah, and in a couple of years too. That's like
in
poof.
In 6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
Wow,
it's a public company. Like it was, and
wow.
I like looked him up after. I like looked up the company. I was like, oh, that's the guy.
Oof.
It was very funny, and he's
That's
like,
tough.
all depressed.
All right, let's get personal for a couple minutes. Take me through some of your history. You served in the IDF. When was that, and what drew you to enlist?
I was, when you don't have much to lose in life, and you don't really have much to risk. Like, I didn't have anything to really come back to the U.S. for, so I was traveling. I was 18. We never had any money, so I never even left North America. Was I was in 2010 was when I enlisted. I lived in Israel in 2009. I lived on a farm in Israel.
So right after high school.
Right after high school. So you can't wait after, because your body doesn't. It's pretty abusive, like physically. So you can't really wait until after. You can't wait till you're like 20. Your body heals very differently when you're 18, 19 than when you're 23.
And how long did you serve?
A year and a half.
A year and a half. Okay, so this was like before Protective Edge.
I was there when Gilad Shalit was coming home, right before Protective Edge. A lot of my friends were in Protective Edge. Yeah. A lot of my friends right now are in Gaza.
Wow.
I have friends of mine that were killed. I have friends of mine that were injured. I was just in Israel now for about a week, and they were, what's it called? I met people that, one guy lost 37 soldiers, 7 are captured. Another woman, her husband's in Gaza. I was up at the Hezbollah border, visiting my friends at the Hezbollah border. I did a podcast up there, which was pretty crazy, just to like 20 minutes after Hezbollah shot exactly where I was. I was like, yeah, that was close to death. Mm-hmm. And I just got to a point where I realized the only identity you have in this life is your core identity.
Yeah.
For me,
it's being Jewish. Yeah.
So what would happen?
It's like such a threat nowadays.
It's such a threat, and people are losing business because like it's pathetic. The whole thing's outrageous. But what I realized was you have to protect your core. And your core happens to be, I didn't necessarily fight for the state of Israel. I fought for the Jewish people.
Right.
And so when they ask me, why are you here in Israel? I go, I'm not really here in Israel. I'm really just like fighting for I'm like a proxy for the Jews in America.
Protecting
if you want to say
identity.
Exactly. I'm protecting who I am. And I know that if I didn't do this now, I'll regret not being the doer for the rest of my life. And I'll be like a lot of the Americans that didn't feel, because I didn't have, like people go like 9/11 was the worst day in history for me. I didn't have that. I didn't have that American identity. My parents are immigrants. I didn't have that. It was a horrible day, all that stuff, but that just wasn't me. Right. So, but what I did feel was whenever there were Jews attacked.
Yeah.
That was
October 7th.
October 7th is a perfect example. Like I was just saying last night, I was like, I feel like I've been in like a fog for like 4 months, and only now am I finally getting out of it. Only now am I going like, hey, I'd like to like network again and start like talking to people. Like it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a different boat than I am, but even me, I had such a difficult time processing the atrocities of what happened that day. I even found myself, like, there was a moment where I was actually sitting in this office and I had read the news reports that came out that, that Hamas cooked babies in ovens. And when I read that, I literally, like, at the top of my lungs, I screamed in this office. Like, I don't know what, like, came over me. It's never really happened to me before, but, like, I had to release this energy that was built up in me because of reading this. I was so torn by this. I couldn't believe that people had the ability to do something like this. And then on the other side, you have people that are denying that this ever happened at all, and people who are sympathizing with these resistance fighters, they call them. And it's so mind-blowing to me. So I'm curious, on the heels of that, is that how this, and you touched on it a little bit, is how this situation on October 7th affected you personally as someone who served and who connects with.
So I used to serve on that border. I've been to Beirut 100 times. I've been to Nachalos. I've been to all these places. These are all Kibbutz Malachi. All these places I've been to plenty of times. So for me, I got affected really, really badly. I had that. It wasn't a scream, which I'm curious what the neighbors thought when you scream. Like, did they come in?
I didn't really give a shit.
No, but I'm saying, did they, like, come in and be like, is everything okay?
No.
Nothing.
Actually, when the doors closed in this office, it's
not really.
It's pretty good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like, I'm just curious because I'd be scared. Like, I'd check in if something happened. But it's for what happened to me was I never thought about the Army. I spoke about this on Fox News, or I think it was Newsmax, and I never spoke about the Army after 2010. Or 2012 when I finished.
Yeah, like I didn't know that you served. I actually noticed that you only added recently to your LinkedIn profile.
No, that I've always had.
I only noticed it recently.
That I've always had because I've never really posted about it. I never posted about it. I just said, this is me. And I always got people like, hey, thanks for serving and stuff like that. But, like, I never really posted much about it. I never really, like, most people don't know. Most people don't know that, like, I was in Gaza. Like I was on the Lebanon border. I was in the West Bank. Like, people don't know that. And as an American that didn't really speak Hebrew, so I'm there, like, I'm just like a schmo walking around. Like, I didn't even know what was going on. And it for the first time in my life, I actually got flashbacks. And I had a few times, like, I stand up for people. I love all people, and I stand up for people. So even when, like, the Israelis were treating people poorly, I stood up against the Israelis. Or when, like, Arabs were treating people poor, I stand up in general for people who are treated incorrectly.
Sure.
And few times, and I was just talking to a friend in Israel, like 3 times I got a gun that was cocked and pulled to my head, like, ready to, like, I'm done. Like, the game is over, and if I don't be an insane person, they're gonna shoot me. Like, if they don't realize, like, that I'm going to, like, I'm gonna, if they, whatever, you get into this fight or flight mode. And I always fought, and those flashbacks started happening, and you remember these families. So you felt when you heard what happened that it could be your child.
Exactly.
And it could be my child.
Exactly.
So yes, I had
a child who's the same age as my daughter.
These people, I sat with one. I did a podcast with a woman who her husband's in Gaza, and they have a kid. They have 2 children, 2 daughters, 2.5 and 7 months. They made the 2.5-year-old watch while they were taking away her husband. They put guns in her face so they could traumatize her. And the mom even said to me, she goes, and I knew she knows exactly what's happening. That's crazy. That's my son. My son, I don't know, how could he handle something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking, like, when the Hamas guys, like, showed the video of, like, the Israeli babies, I was like, my son could kick the crap out of these guys. Like, he would just nonstop cry, and they would just be like, here, just take him back. Like, it's not worth like, you want the hostage? We won't even take any of our prisoners back. You could just have him. But those flashbacks came back, and I realized that these were really good people, and it could be, it just happened to have been in that location, and I shared a part of their life. And you take energy from people throughout your life, and it empowers you. And if you're somebody who embraces all and lets yourself be open to it, and you realize, like, I get very affected because me and you work with a lot of people. I have clients that have died.
Yeah.
And I don't get very sensitive to it, but they're a part of my life forever. And these people were a part of my life forever. So all the flashbacks came back of, I don't want to say trauma because it wasn't really traumatized, but just things that happened that were inappropriate. And then these horrible situations that people are in that they just feel so helpless, and they were just good people that were just appreciative for life. And that's really what these people attacked. And I realized that then you have the deniers who can't even fathom what that means. You understood it and you expressed it one way. They understood it and expressed it that it's impossible.
Right.
Everybody processed the same information at the same time. You took it and owned it. They took it and said, no, it doesn't make sense. It's impossible.
Right.
Completely different types of people. The Jews for Palestine. I know people I went to high school with that are still denying this.
Yeah.
They went to Jewish school and they're denying it. Which is
insane.
It's capo. It's Nazis. It's
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's so clear that all of this, maybe aside from the Jews for Palestine, but all of this is so rooted in anti-Semitism. Like, it's so evident because it's so ridiculous to deny that this stuff happened. Like, it's literally all documented.
And they didn't want to hide it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a secret.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you get the stupid question that where was the army at that time? They sent an army, a highly trained army, into civilian territory that was not that guarded. 3,000 commandos that are trained for one thing, all drugged up to kill, and they knocked out all the Jerusalem Post, who I interviewed, the editor-in-chief, was knocked offline. The Jerusalem Post, the papers were knocked offline.
Yeah.
So there's Israel did it. What are you talking about? Like, it's all these, they didn't hide, and they sent an entire military force.
Yeah. And
how many hundreds of soldiers were killed? So when you say like, oh, Israel, when people say Israel did it, number one, it's disgusting. And they're filth, and if they want to ever be my clients, they can go kill themselves because I'll never take them. And if any of them are my clients, you're fired. I don't care how much money I make.
You don't believe that this was a security error in any way?
I believe it was a huge security error. That's no question. But I do also understand what it means to protect a border like that.
Yeah.
And I do understand there's not that many active combat soldiers right now in general in Israel. Let's say there's 50,000 active combat soldiers. That's not a lot of people.
Yeah, and how many reservists do they call up?
At any time there's about 350,000 active soldiers in Israel. 50,000 are combat.
Right.
Then you have the reservists that you can pull up 1 to 2 million. So there's a big reservist pool. They pulled in like 400,000, something like that. So you're saying, okay, so let's say the Gaza border is a spread thin border in general, and they relied on their technology, and that Israel got stupid, and they thought that their tech can see everything, and they got reports and whatever. They were dumb. There's no question. There was big security failures. But when you send 3,000 people on a centralized point, and you have cyber warfare at the same time, so you're relying on tech, and you're sending in significant amounts of military,
plus thousands of rockets
at the same time. Plus,
it's a total bombardment.
It's a total bombardment. You can't expect. And did the IDF answer slowly? They did, but they didn't at the same time. I mean, people went in. A lot of soldiers lost their lives.
Yeah.
And like, you can't just show up and just gather everybody and just show. You need to know what's happening.
Yeah,
and when
even civilians ran in and
correct, and they got like people got killed. You can't just say, oh, it's Israel had they won. They took this battle, but and now you look on the opposite side. Israel's killed, let's say, 10,000 Hamas terrorists. How many have they lost? 180.
Yeah.
So you would think Hamas would be prepared. So is it a huge security failure on Hamas side? No, they are losing to Israel the same way we lost to them in round one.
They poked the bear.
They poked the bear
big time.
Big time.
It was a huge fucking mistake on their part, but I think that it was intentional. They wanted the world to see Israel's response so that they could blame Israel for everything.
And what the goal was, and just doing this podcast and the right people and talking to the right people, the goal was, for example, Hezbollah, there's all these different factions across people don't understand Hamas is the subsect of the Muslim Brotherhood, So Hamas is the last military front of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood were very powerful in Egypt. They were very powerful in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia wiped them out. You're talking about Saudi Arabia exterminated the Muslim Brotherhood. They're not an international known terrorist organization. Hamas is the last military faction of the Muslim Brotherhood. So when Hamas did this, it was basically like their last crying and saying like, okay, we're going to fight for, and now we want to bring back the Muslim Brotherhood. So Students for Justice of Palestine, for example, the owner, the head of Students for Justice of Palestine is a convicted Hamas Muslim Brotherhood member. All these organizations across the U.S. and Europe, these large organizations that are leading these rallies, these aren't students.
No.
These are convicted Muslim Brotherhood members who are now fighting a different battle. That's why they're on the Hamas side. So you had the Muslim Brotherhood coming in and doing what they were doing. So they're smart. It's not just Hamas against them. It's the Muslim Brotherhood, which is spread around the world. And then you have all these other organizations, Hezbollah, for example, that's organized by Iran. And Iran is funding all these organizations. And Hezbollah was supposed to go in first. Hezbollah was pissed that Hamas went in first. Now what do people look at Hezbollah? And Hezbollah is a very, very powerful army. And we can go as technical as you want to go technical. And I also limit because I run out of technicalities because I'm not the experts that I've spoken to.
Oh, but you're clearly very well informed.
I'm very well informed because of the really the podcast has been a gift for me. But why did Hezbollah? If you look at Hezbollah, you personally, for example, do you look at Hezbollah as the leader or the follower to Hamas?
At this moment in time, they seem like the follower.
They're the follower, right?
Yeah.
You think Hezbollah, the most powerful army in Lebanon, is happy that they're now looked at the followers of Hamas?
Yeah.
So they were supposed to go in first, but Hamas surprised them too.
Yeah.
Now Hezbollah is cheering because they have 70,000 refugees in the north, and they're basically disrupted Israel's economy and it's disrupted. So they're happy too, but they look like they're Hamas followers. The Houthis also look like Hamas followers. They're all upset that Hamas went in first.
Yeah.
So what has to happen, and I don't know if this was the question, but what has to happen is that what Saudi Arabia, what I find is that what Saudi Arabia did to the Muslim Brotherhood and basically eliminated them and then rechanged all the books and all the education system and created a model that now the Israelis, and now the Saudi Arabians do not look at a textbook that says if you kill 10 Jews and you kill another 3 Jews, how many Jews did you kill?
Right.
So if they come in and they help, they bring in one of their they have a very famous Gazan, I forgot his name, that's a billionaire in Saudi Arabia, bring him in to run it, use their model, I think they can fix up Gaza and fix up the West Bank.
Well, they've tried. They've tried many times to fix up Gaza. They thought Gaza was going to be the Monaco of the Middle East.
But the problem is Saudi Arabia never got involved. And Saudi Arabia now, you'll see in the paper now that I'm saying it to you, you'll see that they're talking about the Saudi Arabia model, because that's the model they're talking about. They're talking about how they re-indoctrinated, how they changed the culture and ideology.
Yeah. Well, they also, these terrorists, they indoctrinated the educators of this country.
Correct.
A long time ago.
All that's Muslim Brotherhood. The lawyers, the doctors, these are all Muslim Brotherhood, convicted Muslim Brotherhood members. All of them.
Yeah.
That's why
they've put all this poison into the education
correct.
system. In this
Look
country.
at
all these universities have become a joke.
Correct.
I don't think I would at this point in time, if my kids were of age to go to college, I wouldn't send them to any of these universities.
Where would you send them?
To YU.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's
it.
That's
YU
or Turo.
I know people who are raising exorbitant amounts of money now to create more Jewish universities. Even, like YU is it's an Orthodox Jewish university, but the idea that you can create like a secular Jewish community, a secular Jewish university, I think that's a great idea.
I think I love the idea. That's that's really the right thing. They have been the
whole world's against us anyway, so let's just go do our own thing.
I agree with that, but I don't think I think the loud world is against us. I don't think the quiet class world is against us.
Well, Hamas and, all these terror organizations, they're far better marketers than the Israelis
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're the classic,
Recently, though, the IDF's marketing has gotten really good.
Way better.
Yeah,
the necklaces, they got that. I like the poster move.
Yeah.
They did a good job with the posters.
Like the way they were releasing all those phone calls, those Hamas phone calls.
Yeah. No, they did.
But even with all that, people still don't believe it. It's ridiculous.
I find there's three levels. There's an audience. There's the people who are always going to hate. There's the people that are in the middle, and there's like the people who are always going to hate that are like Nazis. And there's people in the middle, like me and you, or just like not the people who are just kind of silent, sitting, not sure which way to choose. And then there's the people that's in our camp, and most of the people are sitting in the middle. Most of the people think that there's 500 million Jews out there.
Right.
It's like ridiculous, and like. We just don't have a good narrative. The narrative of Hamas is that they're the victims and the Gazans and Palestinians is a very strong narrative. We don't have that.
No.
We do counter narratives. We do, Hamas came in, Hamas is attacking us, or like Hamas is a victim. No, we're a victim. We did the Holocaust. Like we always respond like Black Lives Matter. No, Jewish lives matter. Like we don't have anything that's leading.
It's really like advancing
Correct.
Our narrative.
We don't have our own creative narrative that we are good, honest people that just want to advance the world, and we want to challenge ourselves and push the world and try new things and create social networks and do more good for the world and advance in everything that we can do. We don't have that narrative. We have the counter narrative. When they say you're greedy, we go, no, we're not. If the Jews were in control of the media, then we wouldn't be losing the media war. Like that's our response.
Yeah.
Like we're responding to people that are Nazis. Talk to people. You're not convincing those people. Talk to people about what we do best.
Right.
And that's it. Got me passionate.
I mean, that's pretty good. I agree with everything you said. I don't even have a response to it, honestly. It's like it's just it's very mind-boggling what's happening in the world right now, and I hope that it corrects itself relatively soon. Although I suspect it won't.
I don't know. Do you think that they're gonna go that? I mean, what's the future for our kids?
Yeah, it's a really good question, but I certainly don't want to send them to any of these American universities.
Yeah, I mean, you can't like.
Yeah.
I know Yeshiva University got record applicants. Turo University got record applicants. Sam got record applicants.
Yeah, like my older brother, his son, my nephew is a sophomore in high school. And he was like, he's not applying anywhere other than YU. Like, that's
really?
it.
Such a shame. It's not a great education.
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably get better now.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll be able to charge more for it.
They're charging. They're not scared of charging either.
So my last question for you. What's next for you? What's the next chapter in Klyman world?
I feel like...
In the book of Klyman.
In the book of Klyman. Exodus of Klyman. I find that right now I'm building... instead of sitting alone on October 7th and just being depressed and not being able to do, I realized God gave a gift that I'm able to speak and I'm able to empathize with people. So I decided to do the podcast. I decided to take what I was doing anyway and channel it towards showing the world who we are and that we want to spread light. I want to enable more people to do that. So I've had great guests like Hillel Fuld. I've had Avi Meir, the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, Jen Cohen, one of the biggest podcasts in the country. I've had like great, amazing guests. Stand with us from Michael Dixon. I mean, Living L'Chaim, Yaakov, like all these great guests and great podcasts. And I just want to, right now, it's hurting me financially, but it's growing me as a human being so much more.
It's feeding your soul. It's fulfilling.
It's very fulfilling. The same thing that you enjoy the marketing and you enjoy this. It's very time consuming, but I feel like I've never really taken a step back with my foot on the pedal to create something more than myself. I never created a product. I've always sold and I've created efficient services. So my goal now is to create this platform, build the platform so it can get some real like content and I can inspire. And I've been reached out after I went on Fox and Newsmax. I was reached out by mostly Christians. I raised about $1.3 million. 500,000 of that was from Christians. I'm trying to secure right now a $250,000 donation, not from any Jew. It's from a Christian.
Right.
So like the voice is working, and there's so much more that we can do. And I'm trying to just do as much as I can every day, and you need to have scalability with your doing, and you need to rally people that if they see me doing, they will do also. And I think it's working. I hope it's working, but I mean, look at this conversation. Like, we're having this conversation. You never know where life is going to build you. And in the meantime, also, obviously, building my financial planning. We've clients who are like, hey, I'm not sure I really am for Israel. And I see what the Jews are doing that's wrong. Like, don't really feel comfortable. We fired them. I moved for companies that spoke against Israel. I stopped doing business with them. I was very clear that if you don't, number one, if you speak up, great. If you don't speak up, that's okay, because some people find it unnecessary, which I find inappropriate. But if you speak against, I won't do business with you. Right. So I've had to move. I've had to change. Instead of people dictating where they put my life, I've changed where I put my business. So being very conscious of that, and then building a platform to help people rally, and helping my clientele and business owners give to worthy causes and speak up, because that's really all we need. That's the only way we're going to overcome this, is if we're unified. So I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do my part.
It seems as though your work has changed to become really more of a vehicle for what you're really passionate about.
Correct. I was always passionate about.
And that's honestly going to bring your work to the next level.
I think so. I haven't felt it financially, which is weird for me.
Well, it takes time.
It takes time.
It's like building a new business.
Yeah.
You're basically building the same business, but with a new direction.
Correct. It's also like, I had one, and I don't even, like, people are reaching out to me. I had one thing that had like 40-something thousand downloads, like, and listeners between the clips and the video and all this stuff. I had like, all of a sudden I'm getting reviews. I have like 50-something reviews on Spotify. Like, I launched 11 episodes or 10 episodes. Like, yeah. I'm just warming up, and like, I have 11,000. I don't even, like, my LinkedIn has grown from 34,000 people to almost 6,600 in like 2 months, like, or 3 months. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. And I hope it's working. I hope I can get more people to do more, and I can engage more platforms like your platform and other, I mean, you're in, but like, you can engage other people's platforms to do the same as you. And that's how you can create a ripple effect.
No, it's, of course, every time I post anything, something happens. Something good comes out of it. So you're doing the right thing. You just got to keep moving.
That's it. No, I got so many in the pipeline. I don't know how I'm going to release them all. I got so much.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. Do I launch 2 a week? But then I think it's too much.
It's a little excessive.
It's a little excessive. It's too. I post once a day, but I do. I'm doing once a week. I literally have like 50 episodes. But what's cool is I can cherry pick like which topic I want to bring up, and if I get someone better, and I just threw all the people I recorded at the beginning, just my practice.
Just like people. Call a few of them and be like, listen, sorry, it accidentally got deleted.
Sorry, Brian. Yeah. I know you're really passionate. I'm also doing some people like, I didn't like it. Let's re-record it. And it's like, no
problem. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. All right, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks so much for coming, for having me. I'm excited for what you're doing. It's great what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
I'm really happy for you.
I'm going to be calling you for more financial advice.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a very informative conversation for me in particular.
Yeah, you're doing good. Well, thanks for taking the time, and happy about your new venture.
Yeah, thank you.
You as well. Serhant is big. Serhant is real.
I'm loving it. I've got to tell you, I really love the company, and I love,
Well, you're a marketing guy, and he's a marketing guy.
And he's an exceptional leader. So I genuinely enjoy working under his leadership. And that, to me, was the thing I was most skeptical about coming into Serhant. When I walked through the doors of that building, I was like on the verge of accepting a 6-figure deal from Compass. Mm-hmm. And I left that on the table because I just felt like I would be crazy not to come here.
Yeah, if someone's going to help you double your growth and someone else is going to write you a check, I double my growth every day of the week.
I mean, listen, my business has completely leveled up going to Serhant. Like, now I'm working on a $300 million new development. I have, listings that are in price points that I dreamed about doing deals this size. So it's really like a different game for me than it was 2 years ago.
Your wealth is going to be directly correlated with the people you surround yourself with. You Absolutely. Surround yourself with people like that in his network. You're going to be that way.
Absolutely.
Well, good for you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
Good stuff.